Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, this will be the last question. And what I am going to ask these gentlemen to do is that in answering it, both of you responding to it, that you may also make your closing statements and remarks. And we will begin with Mr. Hitchens once this gentleman has asked his question.
Thank you. Let us assume for a moment that atheism takes hold and that religion in general and Christianity in particular begin to decline into a small minority. I would ask both gentlemen, what would be the characteristics and markers of a society as the decades unfold from there?
Just to be sure, so I don't want to appear to misunderstand you. You want to know how I visualize a post-Christian society, or post-religious one. Well, I think we're lucky enough to live in such a society already, one that says that you may not be required by the government or by the school or by the state or by the local authority to subscribe to or pay tithe to any religion of any kind. I often think that those of us like myself who were not born here appreciate this liberty more than those who were, and the uniqueness of it, that in the United States you may not be required to exert yourself for any faith or to contribute to the upkeep of any such thing. And so you already have the lineaments of a post-religious country. Religion is a private matter, in other words. It's up to you. You may send yourself to hell or decide that that's where you're going. You can't take me with you. And you can't ask me to pay taxes to someone who says otherwise. And this is the beginning of liberty politically, and I think the beginning of liberty morally and intellectually. That'll have to be my condensed statement on that point. To make my closing remarks, I think I'll make sure that Dinesh can't, within the time available, say that I didn't respond to his points. Just about his own church, because this has now become a salient matter, and after all, Dinesh is not just defending religion here, or even just Christianity here, or even simply saying that there might be a deist possibility or a theist one. He is actually saying that he defends a church that says that salvation is on offer here, redemption is on offer. He's making, though he doesn't make them publicly to you, he rather smuggles these things through customs, he's making very vast claims in a rather surreptitious manner. Now, as it happens, he's right. At the Second Vatican Council, the Church rather muted the idea, the Roman Church, that only by it could salvation be achieved, that those who were other kinds of Christian had just got it wrong and unfortunately were doomed. Protestants, Eastern Orthodox, others who they'd persecuted in the past, Jews who were considered responsible individually as well as collectively for the death of Christ, all of these were to be condemned. Some of that was rolled back and dumped for a bit, but under the regime of Joseph Ratzinger, many of these teachings and tenets are being retrieved and retooled, including the one that says there is an exclusive Catholic route to redemption. And I'll add another very sinister thing that's happening. The Pope has started offering indulgences again. Some of you will remember the Protestant Revolution, the Lutheran Revolution begins against the sale or offer of indulgences, of remittance of time in purgatory or hell in the future. Those who attend Catholic youth festivals now, most recently in Australia, are told, if you come in a certain spirit and you make a certain contribution, you may have a certain remittance of time in purgatory or hell in the future, or after your death. But if you make a really full-hearted commitment, you may get what's called a plenary indulgence. And that means, sorry to bore you with this, but I think it's important, remission for all the sins that you've committed up till now, which can only mean that the spatio-temporal continuum in the afterlife is considered to be the same as it is here. This is the most barbaric nonsense. And it's the sort of thing we thought we had left behind before even the protests made by Luther and Hus and the other martyrs of the Protestant Revolution. It is a repulsive concept. Now, on the question of Pascal, the famous wager that Dinesh put forward so softly. I think the best way perhaps to distinguish my view from his is to say what I think about it. The wager, this vulgar gamble, this three-card monte offered by a Catholic reasoner says, what do you got to lose, Buster? Bet it's true and you win. Bet it's false, you lose. Why is that true and why is that moral?
I have to ask you to wrap up.
Yeah, first, who's asking? Who's asking you to make this way? Who's saying, which divinity is saying, get this wrong? I'm fascinated to see which way you bet, because if you bet wrong, you're going straight to hell. What about that, for one thing? Second, which deity is not capable of saying, well, Mr. Hitchens, I notice that you, even on penalty of hell and condemnation, will not agree to worship me. You've been told what the odds are, you've been told what the stakes are. They must have impressed you in some way, but you say the evidence isn't good enough and the reasoning is even worse. And would not the sort of deity that you might expect Dineshom D'Souzom or Mr. Taunton to respect say, well, I make some allowance there for a little intellectual courage, perhaps. Maybe a little moral integrity. No, you bet wrong. You're going to be tortured, not just for a long time, but forever. This is why I think I can close by saying that religion, as offered to you by its advocates, is immoral and irrational, and that the tyranny that it proposes you live under, fortunately, has no evidence to support the idea of its existence, and that by this discovery, and this alone, we are made aware of the truth, and that truth can make us free. Thank you.
I want to begin by noting in Christopher Hitchens a little bit of I would say, obsession with pinning me as a Catholic. And I think the reason for this is because, as I mentioned myself, my ancestors were arguably bludgeoned into Christianity by some stern missionaries. I'm sure my ancestors would disagree, but I'm actually glad that those missionaries came. And here's why. Someone asked Christopher earlier, have you actually given any thoughtful consideration to the Bible? You notice he didn't say yes, because the answer seems to be no. He attacks a Christianity that he constantly misdescribes and mischaracterizes. Let me give a couple of examples of why what I think his stronger arguments don't hold up. He says that our religion is a product of where we were born. True, but that is in some ways what you could call the genetic fallacy. If you and I were born in Papua New Guinea, most likely we would subscribe to worship the local deities, but neither would we believe Darwin's theory of evolution. We are very unlikely to accept Einstein's proposition that E equals mc squared, conduct a vote among the Papua New Guineans, and see how they come out on that one. The truth of Darwinism or Einstein or Christianity has nothing to do with whether or not we come to believe it because of where we were born. That's a fallacy. Christopher also allied himself with Freud's idea, which is that religion is a form of wish fulfillment. I believe it because I wish it to be true. Now imagine we all got in this room here this evening and we felt that life was tough. We have all kinds of ailments, diabetes, death is waiting for us. So we're going to make up a religion to make us feel good. I can completely see how we'd come up with the idea of heaven, which fits anyone's definition of wish fulfillment, eternal bliss, no suffering, no pain. I really don't see why we would come up with the idea of hell. Why? Because hell is worse than diabetes. Hell is worse than anything we would experience on earth. So why would a wish-fulfilling Jew or Christian come up not only with hell, but all these strictures of Christian morality, the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that. If this was all a matter of wish fulfillment, I'd get up and strike 3 of them myself. The Jewish, it might be true of some other faiths, but the Jewish and Christian religion do not look to any fair-minded person like they were invented because we wanted to feel better about ourselves. Freud was totally wrong in that sense. Now, I think the reason that I think a couple of questioners and Christopher Hitchens have been able to get on their high horse this evening is the following. There is a total unwillingness to face up to a simple fact, and that is, even as Darwinian primates, there is evil in the world that makes no Darwinian sense. For example, in the animal kingdom, you might find a lion that wants to chase an antelope, but will you find a lion that wants to wipe out the entire antelope population from the planet? In other words, I can understand why human beings to survive would want to kill off a rival. I don't understand why they would want to exterminate an entire population. This evil seems distinctive to human beings.
Because they're made in the image of God.
Nowhere in the animal kingdom. The point I'm trying to make is a Darwinian explanation is inadequate. And if you look at religion, it is an effort to account for phenomena that have no easy, natural explanation.
30 seconds.
What would a world be like, to answer your question, in which there was no Christianity, in which there was no God? You can't look at the example of Europe or the United States, because we are cultures built on a Christian foundation. One of the most comical aspects of this debate is Christopher is standing on a Christian mountain even while trying to kick the ground out from under his feet. Even the moral principles he talks about came into this civilization because of Christianity. Here's my point. You want to find a secular society, you've got to go look at the communist societies which tried to completely extirpate not only God, but also the morality that came out of God. Philosophers like Nietzsche, who have thought hard about what a secular society would be like, Nietzsche says, if you want to get rid of God, you got to get rid of the idea of human dignity. You got to get rid of the idea of human equality. You got to get rid of this idea of liberty. And why? Because those are imports from the notion of a transcendent creator who created us special. If there's no God, we're not special. So what I'm saying is we haven't seriously confronted secularism in its most profound sense. Not even, I'm sorry to say, the eloquent and worthy opponent, Christopher Hitchens. Thank you very much.
Well, I don't know about all of you, but I am exhausted. I think you'll agree with me that these are two of the most interesting and engaging people that you're likely to encounter. And indeed, you may encounter them in a moment, as there will be a book signing in the lobby, so you can queue up for that. Audio and video recordings of this will be available on the Fixed Point Foundation website. You can make your way there. Thank you so very much, and thank them for coming.